evening. It's so nice to have you here with us on our final concert of the semester on campus. I'm going to be, throughout the evening, giving you little enticements because we really want you to come hear us again on Monday night. On Monday night, we're doing this program in Meadows Symphony Center. Yeah, ooh, wow. So, all the noise that we just made on that piece, and this gargantuan orchestra that's going to be coming in for the next piece, humongous orchestra. We can barely fit on the stage. And I remember reading reviews of concerts conducted by my predecessor, Maestro Phillips, and the music writer for the Dallas paper kept saying, this marvelous orchestra, but they need a bigger hall to play in, right? I love this space for Mozart, for Haydn, for Beethoven, even Schumann, Mendelssohn, it's wonderful. But for Stravinsky, even the Tchaikovsky march that we just did, it's a lot for this small space to handle. So, how many of you are going to come Monday night to hear it again? Okay, by the end of the night, I'm going to have all the hands up. Because I have little enticements to make it worth your while. Because we're going to do some things that night which we're not doing tonight. But we're going to do something tonight just for you. So, I don't want you to feel like we don't regard you very, very highly, because we do. You're our loyal audience. Let's give them a round of applause, shall we? It means a lot to the SMU Meadows students that you're here to listen to them. All right, Stravinsky, May 29, 1913, changed music forever. No composer after that date has been able to shake what happened on that day with the Ballet Russe in Paris. And we're going to go over some of that. Because Stravinsky, he was still a student of Rimsky-Korsakov in some ways, with the Firebird, with Petrushka. But with this piece, which he'd been thinking about when he was writing Firebird, he was already thinking about this piece. We're going to deconstruct it a little bit for you right now. One of the things Stravinsky loves to do is he loves to take one harmony, like the violas and the second violins are going to do for you right now. Just a nice dominant 7, all right? Or this harmony, cellos and basses, which sounds fine by itself. But then Stravinsky takes these two chords, E flat 7 and an F flat major. Why would he write F flat major? Why can't he write E major? Anyway, that's another story. And he puts them together, and here's what it sounds like. And then he gives it some rhythm. Horns, feel free to join us. Right? So sometimes on the beat, sometimes off the beat. So he's always jigging and jagging, jigging and back throughout this piece. What else does he do? It's not just with harmony. He also takes the simple octave. Let's hear the two clarinets. All right, they have this duet. Logan's still getting ready. You ready to go now? Ben and Logan don't do this. Simple octaves, all right? Maybe a classical composer would do this. It's pretty enough, right? Stravinsky does this. He takes the octave and he compresses it just a little bit to get this sound. And you know, like Miles Davis would say, after a while, those wrong notes start sounding really good. You know, because you get used to it. And for all these young people, I mean, in 1913, it must have been a madhouse. It must have been crazy. The orchestra just must have been revolting, right? Looking at the parts. These guys said, "Oh, okay, we got this." It's like, for them, it's like playing Mozart. Let's keep going. He also uses really different instruments. Let me introduce you to Daniel here in the back, all right? Look at that. Okay. Young people under the age of, like, say, any kids under the age of like 15 or 14 here? Okay, can you identify that instrument? Yes, it's a trumpet. What kind of a trumpet? It's a very pregnant trumpet, otherwise known as a bass trumpet. And this is what it sounds like when Daniel plays this. Daniel, everyone. And you've already noticed that we don't have just 2 oboes. We have 5. 3 oboes and 2 English horns, 3 bassoons, not one contrabass. One contrabassoon was not enough for him. He needed to have 2. All right? And they have their own solo passage later, where they're the only ones playing. What else about this? Oh, Jenna, put up your instrument. That's a piccolo trumpet. But Bach liked that. Bach used that, right? So that's not so unusual. But the bass trumpet, ooh, that's a different beast altogether. All right, now what are these funny-looking instruments back here that Jackson and Owen are playing? Okay, let's look at Owen. Okay, Charlie, let's see your French horn. Just go ahead and raise that up. Okay, now raise this instrument. Go ahead, Owen. It's not a baritone. It's not a euphonium. It's a Wagner tuba. Ooh. Wagner invented it because he wanted a sound that would somehow allied the horns with the sound of the tuba. He needed something that really would get, and so Anton Bruckner was really the only composer after Wagner who uses Wagner tuba quite a bit. But other than Bruckner in this piece, are there any other pieces you know of that use Wagner too? I've spoken enough. Let's hear Jackson, and then I'm going to tell you, I'm going to actually suggest to you what it really sounds like when they play. Yeah, it's almost like the sound. Okay, the men in the audience here who have watched their wives give birth. That sound, I remember my wife making a sound like that, all right? There's no sound like that. And when you've heard it, it stays in there forever. And the Wagner tuba are the closest thing that I know to that, all right? So that's that. Okay, there's something else there are a couple of other things we do, and then we're gonna get on with the piece. At the beginning of part 2, this piece is in 2 parts, 15 minutes for part 1, 15 minutes for part 2. He takes 2 harmonies, this harmony in the oboes and the horns. It's a simple D minor. And then this in the flutes, clarinets, and oboes. And now, just like we did earlier with the strings, here they are together. And then when they start moving, it sounds like C-3PO and R2-D2 on the planet Tatooine. Right? Yeah, you remember that spot? Right? Like John Williams one of my favorite great composers, and he knows only good composers borrow, but great composers, they steal. And he stole that for that moment. Okay, there's something else. The trumpets have this at a climax in part one. This is how it would sound like if Stravinsky were a good boy. But instead, he compresses the octave, just like he did with the clarinets, and it sounds like this. And then the trombones get in the act, all right? Now, you're probably thinking, that's a really awful sound. But another composer that you know very well, he ripped off. Listen to what he did, but that same harmony. Don't forget the mambo. Mambo. Right? It's the same harmony in West Side Story. Absolutely same, all right? He just gives it a different rhythm, gives it a jazzy feel, and all of a sudden, it sounds very different. Okay, you've heard enough of me, you've heard this. Let's get on now with Le Sacre du Printemps, which we could not do without the young man in the back who begins, Andy Brooks. You'd think we'd end the program there. But no, we've got more. We've got more for you. We've got more ballet music written at the same time for the same ballet Russe and Diaghilev, all those guys. I'm going to catch my breath here for a moment. So Ravel, if Stravinsky and Beethoven are probably unique in that they kept changing throughout their lifetimes. After Stravinsky wrote this, he didn't write music like this again. He started writing chamber music. He wrote some operas, and he went through a neoclassic phase. His Symphony in C sounds like it could be Mozart in the 20th century. And then he went through a 12-tone phase with the Requiem Canticles, which he wrote just a few years before he died in 1971. And Beethoven, like Stravinsky, is a rhythmic composer, right? But Ravel, his music, when I look at a score of Ravel, I feel like I'm looking inside a Swiss watch. Everything is so perfect. There's not a wrong note anywhere. The great composers all make orchestration mistakes where we have to fix the issue. Ravel, never. If it's an orchestration problem, it means that I'm not paying attention. So this ballet, it's an hour. We're going to play the last 15 minutes of it. And it begins with a pantomime and then the danse générale. And the first part is the sunrise. And what happens during a sunrise? Right? Birds. Let's see how Ravel writes those birds. He takes 3 solo violins and he has them play harmonics. So I'm going to have Jackson play a note regularly. Go ahead. And now he's going to play a harmonic. It's more of a glassy sound, which Ravel loves. And that's what he has. Jackson, Sejin, and Mark doing the beginning of the sunrise. Yeah. And there's another bird back here in the name of Sebastian playing the piccolo. And he plays this. And of course, birds, we know birds like to talk to each other, right? So let's hear them now talking to each other. Yeah, it's beautiful. And yeah, round of applause for Jackson, Sejin, Mark, Sebastian. Right? Now you might have been wondering, there's an instrument that I did not introduce for the Stravinsky, which is also playing in the Ravel. It's in the flute section, way on your left. You see Kendra there? And no, it's not the bass flute. There is such a thing as a bass flute. It's even bigger. You play it, huh? You're nodding your head? He knows about it. Okay, and Kendra's going to demonstrate, she's going to play a little bit of what Ravel writes for her. That's just yummy. There's no other word for that. It's just yummy, all right? And of course, now we're gonna pull something out of the John Williams toolbox, all right? Because he didn't just like Stravinsky, he also loved Ravel. And this is probably one of those, I don't know, when the imperial fighters are going over, you'll recognize it. Right? Remember that? Right, good, okay. Remember, the great composers, they steal. All right? Okay, so that gives you just a little bit of précis of what you're about to hear with this Ravel. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about Monday night. Because I'm going to play a little bit of something that we're going to do on Monday night. but just a little bit of it, because I played all of it, then you wouldn't have to come. But because you're going to go through the teaser, then we have something special just for you after we do that. So here now, Ravel, Daphnis, and Chloé, Suite number 2. We probably should tune first, right? So, if you come Monday, how many are going to come Monday now after having heard that? Come on, more hands, come on. Is it about the parking? Take Dart, right? They don't have to worry about it. It's a nice walk, right? When you come on Monday, we're going to play this as an encore. I think this composer is, for me, one of the, oh, hi guys up there. Yeah. I think this is one of the greatest composers of the 20th century. And those of you who are my age and older, you are going to know who this is. Okay, here we go. Stephen Robinson on the clarinet. The rest of it's even better. You have to come, all right? And we're going to open the program because you all know how much I love our national anthem. And since Tchaikovsky quotes the Russian anthem in the Coronation March, we can't do a Russian anthem without doing the national anthem. So we're going to do that, but it's going to be a version for 19 brass players, all on the lip of the stage, and I'm going to conduct from the audience. Yeah?
A few people around me have a question. They're wondering how they get tickets to come and see you on Monday.
How do you get tickets? It's easy. You just, is Lee here? Is Lee Gleiser here? There's a website, right, isn't there? If you just go to SMU Meadows, right? If you go to the SMU, you know what? I might be giving myself a part-time job doing this. I am e-coming at smu.edu. Send me a note, I'll send you the link. Deal? But if I send you the link, you gotta come. All right. By the way, that's my lovely wife, June. Yeah. I tell everybody, with this band and with this lady, I'm in hog heaven right now. I mean, we were boyfriend-girlfriend 51 years ago. She finally said yes to me last year. She played hard to get. Yeah. So, because you're here, we have a Ravel encore for you. It's part of a piece. It's Alberata del Grazioso. Just 2 minutes. And this is just for you. We're not doing it Monday night. I'm going to say it again. This is just for you. Because we love you. You are our saints. You are our angels. You are our donors. You are supporters. You are our listeners. You are our audience. And they sounded a lot better tonight than they did this afternoon. A lot better, right? Yeah. It was a little rough around, but you know, they play better because of you, right? And the Meyerson Symphony Center, it's a much bigger place, right? We got to put more butts and seats there, right? So, this is for you, Albarada da Graziosa, and thank you so much for being here this evening.
That's all.